So let's go on the offensive side of the ball. And this guy, John Sheeran, is a guy he's one of my favorite guys in the draft. He's not at the position. He's not the most elite speed, talent, elusiveness, etc. But a guy that I think if you have him on your football team, you just love him, and coaches love him. That's Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, started his career 2 years at Michigan, 2 years at UCLA, and really kind of came into become a more versatile guy at UCLA. He was kind of just that straight ahead running back at Michigan. Asked him to do more receiving with the Bruins there. He's 6 foot, 214. He's a true senior, 22 years old. He was a first-team All-American last year and All Pac-12 first team. He ran a 4.53. So, again, the long speed necessarily isn't there, the absolute burner speed, but it's good enough in terms of speed in the NFL at the running back position. So a guy that, and we'll look at some clips here in just a minute, but, here's the carries, 566. So there's a lot of touches here. 566 carries in his career, 195 last year, 3,346 rushing yards, almost 1,400 last year. Very impressive. 6.8 yards per carry average last year, 39 total rushing touchdowns, 14 of them. Oddly enough, 75 catches, 0 rushing touchdowns. And if my research told me correctly, I don't think he lost a fumble in his career. I could be wrong about that, but I looked at a couple places and it didn't note a fumble. So fact check me if you want. But I show this because the Bengals have had some trouble at the goal line, and he's a guy that did not have so many problems with that. Here he is as a pass catcher, pretty fluid.
High and tight.
There and high and tight. Boom, 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 boom. And carries a couple of guys. And what I love, there is a little bit, and I mean this in the best way possible, there's a little bit of the little hop, step, mixing type of move, and you'll see it here again where it's a nice cut, right? P. Ryan did it as well, and then it's upfield. And then you kind of see the vision. Then he'll take on guys. So a good build here. Here's a nice pass catch, just right down the sideline. Cuts back inside, gets more yardage there. Gotta like that. Here's one where he cuts it outside, kind of back in, carries a guy for an extra 5 yards. Like out of this one here, this is one that's just kind of a nice straight shot, and then back to the outside, and there he goes off for a big gainer there. So you like that. Here's the RAS score, a bit better than the last guy, 8.62 than the last guy we just covered, Blackman. You see the height. He's got good height, decent weight. You kind of wish he was a little stronger, but strength seems to be a trait that, is what he's all about. You see the explosion grade, great. The agility grade, poor. Composite speed grade, great. So he's fast. He's explosive, but not necessarily super elusive, though I saw some early elusiveness on some of those. And, of course, the RAS score, courtesy of Kent Lee Platt of Math Bomb. I saw some initial elusiveness and, of course, physical, taking on guys, carrying players. I saw some good vision. I think you get some receiving ability that is still developing. I don't see the long speed. I don't see the big shiftiness, but he'll make a move or two in the open field to get some extra yards. He's got a lot of college touches, I think. So he's got some wear and tear, strength, good build. I didn't really look into pass protection snaps, and I see this guy as round 2, but I didn't really look into pass protection snaps by Charbonnet, but things I've read, things I have seen point to him not only because of the strength in his body build, but also just, when they have occasionally asked him to do it, he'll take on the linebackers and do what's needed there. They just asked him to run the ball and catch the ball a lot, not so much pass protect as much with the Bruins. So a guy I really like. I don't think he's going to be perennial Pro Bowl type of player. I don't know if he's destined to be a Hall of Fame player, but I think he can be a very, very effective player, potentially a 3-down back for a team if you want to go there. And you probably got to get him in round 2, I would think.
So I released a mock draft kind of predicting what the Bengals will do, and he was my second round pick because it makes so much sense to me. Like, I feel like that's the likely strategy or like the likely pick at this point, just because the Bengals love that second round running back succession plan. And honestly, like, I've heard this as a negative from people, but He does remind me a lot of Joe Mixon. Like you said,
Mhm.
like his running style, it just looks like shades of a 22-year-old Mixon. And I don't think that's a bad thing because I think Joe Mixon's fine if you're not paying him, $12.5 million. And I think he does. I think you're right. I think he does just read his blocks better. And Joe Mixon reading his blocks better is probably a much better running back even at this stage, right? So the thing with Charbonnet that I think he does better, I think he absorbs contact so much better, and he's able to get yards with the contact so much easier. He was 14th in the FBS last year in yards per contact per attempt with like 4.2, right? Joe Mixon's yards per attempt with like 3 something, or like 3.9. So the ability to absorb and run through contact and have a variety of moves to just bounce off of guys. Like he doesn't necessarily make guys miss. That's not really his game, but the ability to just run through guys and to not go down at the first touch, that's something the Bengals could use to turn those like 3rd and 7s to like a 3rd and 3 or something along those lines. But yeah, similar build, similar athleticism, similar running styles. Again, in that late second, early third range, it just makes a ton of sense to the Bengals. Like we can get a cheaper version of the running back that we've had for the past 6-7 years in the spot that we typically draft at running back. And I don't think he's a bad prospect necessarily. I do pause, though, like you said, about the overall usage in his career. Like, I don't know if they're willing to take on a running back that has been through so much in his college career, but I think that's also why he probably isn't going to go earlier than like the 50s or 60s in the draft, just because he's got a lot of wear and tear already.
Yeah, and I go back to, I mean, he wasn't asked to pass catch as much at Michigan. And then when he came to Chip Kelly at UCLA, it was like, hey, I mean, this guy can do a little something for us here. Let's utilize him in the passing game, and he did pretty well with it. The fact, looking at it, I could have sworn he had multiple receiving touchdowns. So looking at it and seeing a goose egg in that column was a little bit, oh, okay. But he gives you effectiveness at the goal line. He gives you kind of that initial cut to make sure that he gets positive yardage out. If things kind of break down up front, he'll give you that initial cut to make guys miss, and then he will run through guys and fall forward for extra yards. Again, I don't see this as the next, Gale Sayers or anything like that, but a guy, I think that it can be a very effective back. You will probably want to mix in, pardon the pun there. You will probably want to have someone else in the running back mix with him, as you go forward. But he kind of reminds me a little bit of how Seattle has seemingly found running backs that keep not Marshawn Lynch, but like your Chris Carsons, your Rashad Pennies, and remember Thomas Rawls, the guys that just run hard. They make a cut or two, and they just find ways to be effective, and that's what this kid really reminds me of. A guy that just a cut or two, nothing super splashy, can do things as a receiver, but can make guys miss here and there and be an effective player.
And I think in terms of like where he goes, I don't know if I would use the 60th overall pick on him. I know the Bengals would probably be intrigued, but again, like the lack of like a special athleticism trait kind of makes me pause. And obviously, just running backs in general, I feel like you can find production anywhere in the draft. It doesn't always work out, but there's just enough evidence to say that you don't need a second-round pick to find a solid starter. But again, this is the Bengals we're talking about. They have their ways, they have their methods, and it feels like Charbonnet checks off a lot of boxes. And obviously, they talked to him. They met with him at the Combine. He tested well enough. He seems like a great kid. And also, 92.6, I believe, rushing grade in gap schemes. And that's where the Bengals running game is going. He knows how to read his blocks, so he does seem to fit with what they would do at running back now.
Yep. I like him, and I think there's a good fit there, but we'll see what happens. All right.